I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching AnewZ. Here are the headlines. 3 days of unrest in Los Angeles. Donald Trump deploys the National Guard. More rallies planned. The UN Ocean Conference in France aims to get more countries to ratify an ocean biodiversity treaty. Kazakhstan's and Bulgaria's presidents sign a memorandum to jointly develop the Middle Corridor. Thank you for tuning in. The protests against federal immigration raids in Los Angeles have reportedly calmed throughout the night, following 3 days of unrest, resulting in dozens of arrests and injuries. U.S. President Donald Trump deployed the National Guard over the weekend against the wishes of California's governor, who announced legal action. Further protests and rallies are planned.
Tensions in Los Angeles escalated on Sunday as thousands of protesters took to the streets in response to President Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard. The move blocked off a major freeway and saw self-driving cars on fire as law enforcement used tear gas, rubber bullets and flashbangs to control the crowd. The demonstrations come after the president pledged to deport record numbers of people living in the USA illegally and tighten security along the US-Mexico border. His administration set a goal for US immigration and customs enforcement agents to arrest at least 3,000 migrants each day. However, the enforcement sweep has also affected some people legally residing in the country, including permanent residents, sparking legal challenges and further fueling protests.
I think that's honestly what's heartbreaking the most, because they're making it seem like they're really bad people, like criminals, and when they're not, when they're just trying to work hard for their own families.
I feel sad about how they treat our Latino people from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Latino people from Mexico, Central and South America. I'm not happy about what's happening. These illegal raids are taking hard-working people. It's not fair, it's not right, it's not right, it's not right. We came to work.
Governor Gavin Newsom condemned the National Guard deployment as unlawful. Meanwhile, President Trump defended the move, calling the protests radical left riots and threatened strong law enforcement action.
Be watching it very closely, and when they spit at people, they spit. That's that new thing. They spit, and worse, you know what they throw at them, right? And when that happens, I have a little statement. They say, they spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum criticized the U.S. government over the immigration raids and deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles during a public event.
Recuperar sus derechos establecidos en la Constitución.
We do not agree with this way of addressing the immigration issue. The phenomenon will not be addressed with raids or violence. It will be by sitting down and working on comprehensive reform that takes into account all Mexicans on the other side of the border. That is our position, and we always call for peace, for non-violence, not to intensify any violent form of protest, none.
Legal experts warn that deploying military forces against civilians risks infringing on constitutional rights and upsetting the balance of federal and state powers. The protests continue near Los Angeles City Hall as the city remains deeply divided over immigration and law enforcement tactics.
A new U.S. travel ban signed by Donald Trump has come into force, targeting 12 countries with full entry bans and placing partial restrictions on 7 more.
A sweeping travel ban signed by US President Donald Trump is now in effect. The full ban applies to citizens of 12 countries such as Afghanistan, Iran, Syria and Yemen. Most new visa applications from these countries will be automatically denied, with limited exceptions for US permanent residents, diplomats, sportsmen and special humanitarian cases. In addition, partial restrictions now affect citizens from Cuba, Venezuela, Belarus and Kyrgyzstan. These vary by country. Some are barred from immigrant visas only, while others face added scrutiny or suspended travel for certain categories. The White House says the ban is based on national security concerns, pointing to what it calls deficient screening systems, poor cooperation on identity verification, and high rates of visa overstays in the targeted countries. Trump has linked the move to a recent attack in Boulder, Colorado, where an Egyptian national injured a dozen people during a pro-Israel rally, even though Egypt is not among the listed countries. This is Trump's second major travel ban. His original 2017 order, widely known as the Muslim ban, faced chaotic implementation and was later reworked following a series of court rulings. This time, officials say the rollout is more orderly, with detailed legal justifications and a 6-month review mechanism built in. International reaction has been swift. Chad, one of the banned nations, has suspended visa access for US citizens in response. Its president called the decision a matter of dignity. Somalia has urged dialogue to address security concerns, while Venezuela warned that being in the US is increasingly risky, especially as Trump has deported several Venezuelans in recent months to detention centers in El Salvador. The African Union has appealed for constructive engagement and warned of negative consequences for US-African relations. UN human rights officials say the policy raises questions under international law, particularly over proportionality and non-discrimination. Despite widespread criticism, Trump insists the policy is necessary to prevent potential terrorist threats and ensure stronger border controls. He has not ruled out adding more countries in the future.
Top US and Chinese trade officials were meeting in London for talks on ending the trade war between the countries. The talks followed a phone call between the two presidents and aimed to build on the 90-day tariff truce previously agreed upon in Geneva. Manur Magdoum reports from Beijing.
High-level trade talks between China and the USA are taking place in London today following the recent phone call between President Trump and President Xi Jinping. Both countries are trying to ease the trade tensions and build on the 90-day tariff truce that was agreed to in Geneva last month. Leading the talks are U.S. Treasury Secretary, Commerce Secretary, and U.S. Trade Representative, along with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. The main issues on the table include U.S.-imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, China's restrictions on rare earth mineral exports, restrictions on advanced semiconductor sales, as well as U.S. restrictions on student visas for Chinese students studying in the U.S. The meeting comes as China's economy started showing signs of stress. Its exports to the U.S. fell to 34% in May, and prices at home are falling. These signals add to the urgency for China to find common ground and ease some of the economic pressure. Overall, the London talks are seen as a critical test. Both sides are under pressure to show progress, especially in areas such as trade, technology, and student mobility. Clear outcomes are uncertain, but these talks reflect that dialogue is continuing even as deeper strategic divisions remain. Manu Maktoum, AnewZ, Beijing, China.
Russia and Ukraine exchanged prisoners of war under the age of 25 in the first of a series of planned prisoner swaps that could become the biggest of the war so far. The exchange was agreed at the direct Moscow-Kyiv talks in Istanbul on June 2nd that resulted in an agreement to exchange at least 1,200 POWs and swap thousands of bodies of those killed in the fighting. Kyiv said some of the Ukrainian prisoners released on Monday had been in captivity since the beginning of the war. Neither side said how many prisoners had been swapped, but Moscow said that the same number of personnel had been exchanged on each side. Russia has launched its largest drone attack since the war began, according to Ukraine's Air Force. The latest overnight wave of aerial strikes comes amid Russia's renewed ground offensive on Ukraine's east and northeast.
A record-breaking drone assault rocked Ukraine overnight, with the country's Air Force reporting 479 drones launched by Russia, the largest single-night barrage since the full-scale attack began in 2022. Alongside the drones, 20 missiles of various types were fired. targeting primarily central and western regions of Ukraine. In a statement Monday, Ukraine's Air Force said 277 drones and 19 missiles were successfully intercepted. However, 10 managed to hit targets, injuring at least one person. These figures could not be independently verified. The attack comes amid a renewed Russian ground offensive along Ukraine's eastern and northeastern front lines, a stretch of more than 1,000 kilometers. In a late-night address, President Volodymyr Zelensky acknowledged that in several sectors, the situation is very difficult. As Kyiv struggles with ammunition shortages and stretched forces, uncertainty over continued Western aid, especially from the US, has added pressure on Ukraine's defenses. Meanwhile, 2 rounds of direct peace talks in Istanbul between Ukrainian and Russian negotiators have so far failed to produce breakthroughs, apart from prisoner exchanges and repatriation of the dead and wounded. Ukraine is also hitting back. The country has developed long-range drones capable of penetrating deep into Russian territory. On Monday, Russia's defense ministry said 49 Ukrainian drones were intercepted over 7 different regions. 2 managed to strike a plant producing electronic warfare systems in Chuvashia, more than 600 kilometers east of Moscow. In the Voronezh region, 25 drones were reportedly shot down. 1 strike caused a gas pipeline fire, according to local officials.
As the fighting in eastern Ukraine rages on, police forces are evacuating civilians, among them the elderly and children.
In Ukraine, danger looks and sounds like this. In eastern Ukraine, a police evacuation vehicle moves through the battered streets of Kostyantynivka as a drone detector picks up a threat overhead.
The situation in Kostyantynivka is very tense. It gets worse every day.
Amid the chaos, a fragile moment of protection. 4-year-old Milana is gently secured into body armor by police before the journey to safety.
I'm worried for my child. She needs to develop, go to kindergarten, learn and play with other children. We need to start a new life. She has to live her life and develop. She can't live her life sitting at home or in the yard.
They're among the lucky few who are safely moved into a quieter area in the Donetsk region, where Svetskova's older son awaits them. Elsewhere in the city, another life uprooted. Halnya is helped from her home with her cat by her side and the sound of shelling close behind. Her cat serves as a reminder of a life she now has to leave behind.
I found bombs in my garden. They destroyed so much. My bedding was hanging outside and then, boom, everything was tossed around.
One by one, civilians are being pulled from the fire. For now, they drive towards safety. But the war and its scars follow close behind.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte called for a 400% increase in the alliance's air and missile defenses. Ahead of this month's NATO summit, Rutte said that member countries should raise defense spending to 3.5% of GDP, with an additional 1.5% for broader security. That would bring the total to 5%, a target demanded by the US President Donald Trump.
3.5% will be invested in our core military requirements, while the rest will go towards defense and security-related investments, including infrastructure and building industrial capacity. 5% is not some figure plucked from the air. It's grounded in hard facts. The fact is, we need a quantum leap in our collective defense. The fact is, we must have more forces and capabilities to implement our defense plans in full. The fact is, danger will not disappear, even when the war in Ukraine ends. NATO defense ministers agreed ambitious new targets. The exact details are classified, but we need a 400% increase in air and missile defense. We see in Ukraine how Russia delivers terror from above. So we will strengthen the shield that protects our skies. Our militaries also need thousands more armored vehicles and tanks, millions more artillery shells. And we must double our enabling capabilities, such as logistics, supply, transportation, and medical support.
At the UN Ocean Conference in France, world leaders were urged to ratify a treaty to protect international waters. The pact needs 60 countries to ratify it to take effect. So far, 50 have signed on.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres opened the Ocean Conference in Nice with a stark warning that human activity is pushing the world's oceans into crisis. He urged countries to ratify the High Seas Treaty, which would allow marine parks in international waters, only 1% of which is currently protected. Illegal fishing, rising sea temperatures and plastic pollution are accelerating the collapse of marine ecosystems, Guterres said, threatening both biodiversity and human livelihoods. While 50 countries have ratified the treaty and 15 more pledged to do so, it needs 60 to take effect. The United States has not ratified the agreement and sent no high-level delegation, drawing criticism from ocean advocates. French President Emmanuel Macron, the conference co-host, said he expects the treaty to enter into force by the end of 2025. Investment in ocean protection remains far below what's needed. Between 2015 and 2019, only $10 billion was committed globally, compared to the $175 billion required annually, according to the UN. In response, donors and financial institutions pledged €8.7 billion over 5 years during a weekend summit in Monaco. The UN also announced plans for a new global ocean finance facility to launch in 2028.
Israel says it has uncovered a Hamas command center beneath a hospital in southern Gaza and claims to have killed the group's chief during a raid. A small group of foreign journalists embedded with the Israeli army were guided through what IDF claims is a tunnel complex under the European hospital in Khan Yunis. Gaza's media office rejected the claim, calling it false and fabricated.
Israeli forces have shown foreign journalists what they claim is a Hamas tunnel complex discovered beneath the European hospital in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. Military convoys make their way through destroyed streets, passing scenes of devastation after months of fighting. Outside the hospital's emergency entrance, soldiers pointed to a deep hole, said to be the gateway to a command center used by Hamas fighters.
We are here in the city of Khan Yunis. This is the European hospital right behind me. The European hospital in Khan Yunis. You can see the very big hole in the ground right in front of it. This is the entrance we opened for a very big command and control compound, Hamas command and control compound. Yet this is another example of the cynical use of Hamas, using civilians as human shields, using civilian infrastructure, hospitals again and again.
Mohammed Sinwar was the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip and of its armed wing, following the killing of his brother. He held both positions until he himself was killed by the Israel Defense Forces in May 2025. Footage from inside shows a narrow concrete passage with mattresses, clothing and belongings. This is what Israel claims were signs of an underground hideout. The Israeli army says the raid also uncovered weapons, cash and documents that are now being analyzed for intelligence. The government media office in Gaza denied Israeli military claims that a tunnel was found beneath the European hospital in southern Gaza, saying the allegation was false and fabricated. The office accused Israeli forces of digging the site themselves and staging the footage. Speaking recently, Osama Hamdan, a Hamas official in exile, said that the group has not rejected the latest efforts by the USA to reach a full ceasefire. We confirmed that the movement did not reject the latest proposal of Witkoff, but we presented some comments and improvements to the proposal in order to ensure that this war ends. In a push to stop the militant group, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed that the country has been arming opposition groups in the Gaza Strip.
We have operated clans in Gaza who oppose Hamas. What's wrong with that? It is only good. It only saves IDF soldiers' lives.
The latest claims and counterclaims underscore how deeply hospitals and civilian sites have become entangled in this war.
In the final part of our special Vox Pop series from Yerevan and Baku, we explore how ordinary citizens see foreign involvement in the region's conflicts and peace-building efforts. Are global powers truly invested in lasting peace, or are their interests more strategic than sincere? Here's what the interviewees on both sides had to say.
Խումբ բոլշևիկներ սխալներ արեցին, որի սխալների հետևանքով երկու ազգեր իր հետ պատերազմեցին։ Տրագեդիան նրանում է, որ բոլշևիկներն են այդ ամեն ինչը արած։ Նրանք ասում են մերն է, օնի մակարդակով, մեր է սա մերն է, պատմականորեն մերն է դեռներ ովեն են։ Գիտեք ոնց։ Պետք է խելացի վարվեք, որ վաղը չեմ իստորը քո նախնիները, քո սերունդները չտուժվեն այդ ամեն ինչից, թե ադրբեջանցիներից, թե մեր կողմի։ Դրա, տեսեք, ստեղ շատ նուրբ հարց կա։ Փոխանակ Ռուսաստանի նման դաշնության, այսպես ասած, դաշնակից պետությունը անդարտատնի պատերազմ չլինի, նա Ադրբեջանին այդպես կոչված սայուզնիկ վաճառել է հարցակողական վենք 5 միլիարդ դոլարի։ Հարցակողական 5 միլիարդ դոլար, ինչի համար, որպեսզի հայերի սպանը, հարցակողական շեշտին է Ռուսաստանը, որպեսզի ինքը թելադրի Հայաստանում իրաբար չի լինի դա, հասկանում եք, ուժով, զաստավիտով ոչ մի բան դուրս չի գա, կա մարդկային բարիդրացիական ուսմուն, խելացի ձևով, խելքով դու պիտի պատերազմանել, դա լավ բանի չի բերի պատերազմը, էլի կմզովեն հայերը, էլի կզովեն ադրբեջանցիները։
Fransa'nın işe karışması, Rusya'nın, yaxud Amerika'nın işe karışması mən deyərdim bizim xeyrimizə deyil. Fransa heç vaxt Azərbaycanın xeyrinə işləməyib. Heç vaxt. Heç o sülh danışığına da heç deyərdim sana maraqlı deyil. Hər kəsin öz mənafeyi var. O öz mənafeyin güdürlər hər bir. İkinci də qalsa, Ermənistan özünə qalsa, Ermənistanı qoymurlar heç baş dövlət. Ermənistan özü ilə Azərbaycanla barışar da təkbətək. Təkbətək Azərbaycanla dil tapıb danışa bilər. Bu ölkəni qıcıqlandıranlar çoxdur. Bax, bu da gətirib belə bir mənfi təsir göstərib, gətirib belə yerə çıxardır.
Əgər sülh məsələsini həll edirlərsə, gərək iki dövlət, iki aralarında konflikt olan dövlətlər özlər bir-birinə danışıq yolu ilə həll eləsinlər. Başqa dövlətlərin oraya qarışmağa heç bir xeyri də yoxdur. Fransa dövləti çalışır ki, bu sülh məsələsi həll olunmasın. Çünki o istəyir ki, Ermənistan güya müdafiə edir. Əslində də müdafiə deyir. Ermənistanın işinə qarışıb, onun daxili işinə qarışaraq onların sərvətinə yadına göz dikir. Mənə elə gəlir ki, Fransa özü də bu məsələdə düz mövqe tutmur.
Ես մտածում եմ սենց, որ Ռուսաստանը մնացած պետությունները բոլորը քաղում են իրենց քաղերը։
1992-ci ildə yaranan ATƏT Minsk qrupu əslində bizim işğal olunmuş torpaqlarımızı, vaxtilə işğal olunmuş torpaqlarımızı deyən, onların azad olunmasında, sülh yolu azad olunmasında köməklik etməliydilər. Lakin 92-ci ildən 2020-ci ilə qədər bunların hər hansı bir addım belə atdığını görmədik. Yəni bunu dövlət səviyyəsində də, vətəndaşlar səviyyəsində də hiss etdik ki, həqiqətən bir tərəf mövqe rolu oynaya bilmədilər. Qərb ölkələri daha çox Ermənistan tərəfdən iştirak elədilər. Həm siyasi dəstək, həm Minsk qrupu yaradılıb, lakin həmsədrləri olan ölkələrdən Fransa tamamilə açıqdan-açığa ermənipərəst mövqe göstərdi. Amerika Birləşmiş Ştatları siyasi olaraq bir tərəf rol oynamağa çalışırdı, amma daha çox Ermənistan rol oynayırdı. Bunlar da məlumdur, çünki orada erməni diasporası daha güclüdür. Rusiya isə bir tərəf rol oynamaqdan daha çox öz siyasi mövqeyini qoruyurdu.
Իսկ այս հավը Փաշինյանը ինքը իրան շահերն է պաշտպանում ոչ թե Հայաստանի ու թող էսել նրանց հետ ռադը լինի բայց ոչ գնա ինչ որ դեսուդեն ու ոչ մի երկրի ղեկավարի գործը չի մենք իրանց հետ ինչպես կվարվենք նույն Փաշինյանի հետ նույն ազգային ժողովի նախագահի հետ նույն նախագահի հետ դա արդեն մեր երկրի ներքին գործն է որևէ մեկը իրանց քիթը շխոթի մեր գործերի մեջ
Vasitəçilik eləyən azdır mənim balam. Maniçilik törədən çoxdur. Rusiya, Fransa əsas hasınavına bu ikisidir. Amerika gəh nala vurur, gəh mıxa vurur. O istəyir ki, bizimlə mehriban olsun. Buna görə də əsas məsələ Rusdur. Fikir verirsiniz, biri gedir, biri gəlir, biri gedir, biri gəlir. Körü kök alır kənarda. Sülh başlayacaq, o kimə lazım olacaq? Ona görə də birinci növbədə odur badalaq vuran bizə.
Պետք է բանակցեն եւ փորձեն գալ ինչ-որ համաձայնություն։ Եթե լինի խաղաղություն, դրանից կշահեն բոլոր կողմերը, բոլոր երկրները։ Պետք է ուղղակի դրսից չխանգարեն, չազդեն եւ երկու երկիրը առանց միջնորդների կարողանան պայմանավորվեն։
Ümumiyyətlə, əslində bu prosesi Azərbaycan Ermənistanla özü həll eləməlidir. Bizim və yaxud Ermənistanın nə Rusiyaya ehtiyac var, nə Fransaya ehtiyac var. Ona görə ehtiyac yoxdur ki, burada Fransanın da məqsədi var, Rusiyanın da. Rusiyanın və Fransanın bu məsələyə qarışması o deməkdir ki, onlar ümumiyyətlə bu barışıq sülhünü istəmirlər.
I think now that the conflict is more settled and resolved, I think the only foreign interventions that I would like to see would be like peaceful. And if the foreign countries like US, Russia and France, they push something that's more conflict oriented, I wouldn't support that and I wouldn't want that because there's already enough wars going on around the world and we don't need another conflict. So as long as they want to like sustain the peace in like between the countries, I would support that and I'd very much like to see that.
Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan are set to deepen their economic dialogue during the 4th Tashkent Investment Forum on Wednesday. A dedicated panel named Azerbaijan-Uzbekistan Vector of Economic Partnership focuses on strengthening bilateral trade and joint investments. The session will bring together officials and business communities to discuss opportunities in energy, transport, agriculture, industry, and digital technology. It will also highlight regional projects such as the Middle Corridor and explore new ways for sustainable economic cooperation. At the Data Playground event held as part of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund spring meetings in Washington, the impact of gender equality on economic growth was discussed. The presentation highlighted the importance of removing legal barriers that restrict women's access to the labor market. One of the positive examples shared was the story of 26-year-old Samira, the first female train driver at Azerbaijan Railways.
Azerbaijan recently made a giant leap towards equal access to work for women. Previously, the law prevented women from working in 674 jobs, including train engineers, bus drivers, and carpenters. But again, thanks to the World Bank and Women, Business and the Law data, legal reform happened and these barriers were removed. And there's a very inspiring story of Samira, who you see in the picture here. Samira is the first female railway driver at Azerbaijan Railways. She's 26 and she graduated from vocational school and now she supports her family. And Samira shares her joy and her pride in pursuing her childhood dream of being a train driver.
Following Georgian government's decision to shut down the NATO and EU info center in Tbilisi, NATO reacted, calling the move a significant loss at a time when the public needs facts on the alliance and the country's Euro-Atlantic integration. Nini Nikolaishvili has the details in Tbilisi.
The recent decision made by the ruling Georgian Dream Party to close the information center of EU and NATO have raised concern from the North Atlantic Alliance. A NATO official speaking to Euroscope called the closure a significant loss, especially at a time when Georgian public needs more factual information about NATO and Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. The center, established in 2005, has operated as a legal entity under the public law and have maintained wide network of regional and local offices. Its key role, according to NATO, has been to aware public awareness about the alliance, its policies, and Georgia's strategic partnership with NATO. The closure comes amid ongoing tensions about Georgia's foreign policy orientation. While the Georgian constitution enshrines the country's aspirations to join the NATO and the EU, critics have voiced concern in past few months over signs of democratic backsliding and distancing from European structures. Tamar Tsoleyskeri, the center's director, confirmed on June 4 that the center's functions now will be absorbed by the European Integration Department within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. However, this still remains unclear how these changes will affect the scale and independence of public communication efforts. For now, NATO reiterates that the Georgian people have clearly stated their desire for democratic and Euro-Atlantic future, calling for continued engagement to support that path. It's Nini Nikolaishvili, reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Kazakhstan's Ministry of Energy announced that the Central Asia-China Summit will be held in Astana on June 16th and 17th. Ahead of the forum, Kazakh officials met with representatives of Chinese energy companies in Beijing to discuss potential agreements for the upcoming event. The first summit of China and the Central Asian Five was held in China's Xi'an in May 2023. The head of the OSCE, Finnish Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen, is set to visit Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan on Tuesday and Wednesday. Valtonen is supposed to meet officials in the two countries, the OSCE field missions staff, and civil society organizations. According to the Finnish Foreign Ministry, Valtonen will also visit a university in Tashkent and deliver a speech to students on regional security, cooperation, and the OSCE's future priorities. Kazakhstan's and Bulgaria's presidents Kassym-Jomart Tokayev and Rumen Radev signed a memorandum to jointly develop the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route during a meeting in Astana. The route, also known as the Middle Corridor, aims to expand its reach into Europe through the Caspian Sea. The move is expected to boost trade between China, Central Asian countries, the South Caucasus, and Europe. The two sides also agreed to strengthen cultural, educational, and regional ties. Astana is gearing up to host the 14th plenary session of the Parliamentary Assembly of Turkic States. Set for Wednesday and Thursday, the session in Astana will gather delegations from member and observer states, along with international and Turkic organizations. The 14th session focuses on the role of parliamentary diplomacy, aiming to boost inter-parliamentary cooperation across the Turkic world. Ahead of the meeting of the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, Tehran has warned of retaliatory measures against the UN nuclear watchdog if it passes its draft resolution on Iran, adding it will disclose documents related to Israel's nuclear program. Turash Ralilu has more in Tehran.
On the eve of the meeting of the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, in Vienna on Monday, Iran has warned of retaliatory measures against the UN watchdog and also said it will unveil secret nuclear files of Israel. Iran says it has prepared a list of measures, including lowering its cooperation with the IAEA if it passes a draft resolution on Tehran's nuclear program in its meetings this week. The spokesman of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, Behruz Kamalvandi, said on the state TV on Sunday night that if an anti-Iran resolution is adopted, then certainly the IAEA should not expect the Islamic Republic of Iran to continue its broad and friendly cooperation. Kamalvandi said part of the measures will be technical and part of it will concern the nature of Iran's cooperation with the agency. The US, together with the European troika of France, Germany, and the UK, called E3, using the latest IAEA confidential quarterly report, intend to table a joint draft resolution blaming Iran of non-compliance. Dismissing the report as politically motivated and unbalanced, Iran reacted, saying it does not have any undeclared nuclear material or activity. Also, on the verge of the IAEA meeting in the Austrian capital, Iran's intelligence minister Ismail Khatib said on the state IRIB News TV on Sunday that Tehran will disclose the vast trove of strategic and sensitive documents it has obtained related to Israel's nuclear program. The Israeli government, which has adopted the strategic ambiguity policy about its military nuclear capability, has refused to comment on the news of the leaked documents so far. The local media in Israel, too, has yet to acknowledge significance of the documents, claiming that the Iranian minister's statements lack evidence. Khatib's statements came 2 weeks after Israeli authorities announced the arrest of 2 men on suspicion of committing security crimes on behalf of Iran. Turash Ralilu, reporting for AnewZ TV, Tehran.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching, and do stay tuned to AnewZ.